It must have come somewhere from the deep recesses of my subconsciousness. We were meeting in Michael Obenauer's office late last spring, Aaron and Michael and myself, looking at Leonard Sweet's book, 11 Indispensable Relationships You Cannot Live Without. It was all new to me. I was not familiar with the book at all. But it seemed like a good idea to build our summer schedule around this line of thinking. So I looked at the list of biblical characters upon which the themes are developed, and I said, I'll take Barnabas. Well, over the next few weeks, I started thinking, why did I do that? Why did I choose Barnabas? He's not one of the major players in the biblical drama. And then a couple of weeks ago, it came to me. Jan Karon is a best-selling author who wrote several novels known as the Mitford series, based on a fictitious town in the South by the name of Mitford, and particularly concerned about an Episcopal priest by the name of Father Tim Cavanaugh. I know some of you have enjoyed these books and have followed Father Tim's adventures in Mitford. Early on, he comes into the possession of a large dog. And this dog is a great companion, but a little strange. He usually gets out of his peaceful demeanor and starts creating trouble. He may be barking loudly as he chases a butterfly. He may be digging in someone's rose garden. Things that dogs normally do. But the only thing that will calm him down is for Father Tim to quote Scripture. And that does it every time. Now, to check the accuracy of my memory, I asked my wife, Terry, what was the name of Father Tim's dog in the Mitford series? And she said, Barnabas. See, I knew you'd read those books. Barnabas, that must be where it came from. I don't even have a dog, but I remembered the name, Barnabas. I don't know anyone by the name of Barnabas. I've known a couple of Barneys, but I'm not sure if that's a nickname for Barnabas or not. Is anyone here this morning named Barnabas? I didn't think so. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is in the New Testament a man named Barnabas. How many of you knew that? And that's not enough. We've got to stay for the rest of the sermon. Now we're going to look at Barnabas and see if there's something we can learn from him. We find about him in the book of Acts, more properly called the Acts of the Apostles. And even more succinctly, it could be called some of the Acts of some of the Apostles, because that's what it has to do with. Acts comes right after the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which tell the story of Jesus, and the book of Acts tells the beginnings of the early church. Not far into the story, we encounter a very strange thing. A man named Barnabas. We learn in chapter 4 that a certain part of the early church was practicing what we would call communal living. That is, all their personal property was pooled together, and then each one drew from that as they had particular needs. In verse 36, then, we find these words. Thus Joseph, who was surnamed by the apostles Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, a Levite, a native of Cyprus, sold a field which belonged to him and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So we can legitimately think of Barnabas as the encourager. And this was just the beginning. He becomes a sidekick for the apostle Paul in his missionary journey. So I'm sure you've heard Paul and Barnabas. He goes with Paul to Jerusalem to defend their taking the gospel to non-Jewish people. And when later Paul has a disagreement with young John Mark and looks upon him as unreliable and unfit to go with him anymore, it is Barnabas who says, now wait a minute. Everybody deserves a second chance. I'll take Barnabas with me. Later still then, when Paul was in prison in Rome, he asked that John Mark might come and visit him. So somehow reconciliation had happened, and it must have been due in large part to the encouragement that Barnabas gave to John Mark. Well, this is like a big airport with several runways in which we can take off in different directions. This morning, we're going to all try to be on the same plane so we can take off in one direction. I'm reminded of the woman getting on the plane in Chicago. And as the plane took off, she asked her companion, so where are you going? And he said, New York, of course. She said, this is wonderful. This modern age we live in, you're going to New York, I'm going to Los Angeles, and we're on the same plane. Well, someone in for a big surprise when the plane lands. I can't keep you now from drifting off or using your own runway, which may be more beneficial than the way the rest of us are going. But we're simply talking today about encouragement, how critical a role it plays in life. Or as Leonard Sweet puts it, one of those indispensable relationships you cannot live without. So he poses two questions. Who is or has been your Barnabas? And to whom are you a Barnabas? Who's encouraging you, and who are you encouraging? An indispensable relationship. One of the towns we visited in our choir tour earlier this month, there was a plaque, one of the buildings, which said the German poet and writer Goethe had lived there, however you pronounce his name. He wrote, correction does much, but encouragement does more. And Anatole France has written, 9/10 of education is encouragement. Let me think about that. That's not always true, but I've told a lot of young people that to me the biggest difference in high school and college is in high school you're encouraged to do your best. In college they don't care one way or the other. I'm sure we don't express enough appreciation to our teachers, those who encouraged us and who helped us through that whole schooling process, who said, come on, you can do a lot better than this. You've got a good mind, just use it. Or again, motivational speaker John Maxwell says, remember, man does not live on bread alone. Sometimes he needs a little buttering up. Encouragement. Who has been your Barnabas? Who has been a Barnabas for you? Now, I don't want to embarrass her, but my dear wife, Terry, has been my #1 fan. I was going to say that she was the head of my fan club, but that doesn't cover very many people. But she'll say to me, so what's going on? You seem kind of distant. And I'll say, well, I can't get this sermon together. I'm really struggling with it. And she'll say, oh, it'll come. It always does. Don't worry about it. And the faith and the trust and the love she places in me is so encouraging and so strengthening and so helpful. And I don't often enough tell her thank you. So thank you. Now, I know that too many of you do not have the encouragement of a supportive spouse. But one thing we do have, all of us, or can have, is the church. To say the church that you people have been personally encouraging to me is to greatly understate the importance of your life and mine. Your role as Barnabai. Barnabases, whatever it is. You say things like, so when are you going to preach again? Or, it's so good to have you in the choir. Or, thanks for your prayer this morning. Or, you've been reading my mail. Do you have any booklets left? Poetry booklets? The answer is yes, I do. How many would you like? It's because of the encouragement of people like you that I've been able to keep on keeping on, as John Calhoun would say, which reminds me of another Barnabas in my life. And I don't often enough say thank you for your support, so I say to you, thank you. As Elvis would say, thank you very much. Writer Kurt Vonnegut says that AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, may be America's most important contribution to Western civilization because it gave us two gifts. First, it pioneered mechanisms to combat alcoholism and other addictions. And secondly, it provided a network of encouragers around the world. Now, Leonard Sweet, commenting on this, says, if the church could have been more encouraging and less judgmental, it could have been that global family of encouragers. Well, regardless of that global dimension, I believe the local church, or even more specifically, this local church, is a family of encouragers as we help one another on our life journeys. And it's not so much the big things. It's not selling your property and bringing the proceeds to the church. Although, we can help you with that. No, it's more like a hug or a handshake or a pat on the back. It's adding one more voice to those who are cheering you on, saying, come on, I know you can do this. And saying, thanks for doing such and such. It's taking the time to ask someone how they're doing and then taking the time to listen. Jim Stovall puts it like this: you need to be aware of what others are doing, applaud their efforts, acknowledge their success, and encourage them in their pursuits. Because when we help one another, everyone wins. We walked past the new large concert hall in Lucerne just a few days ago. A mild surprise to me was to see there a poster promoting the appearance of Josh Groban sometime this fall. Now, I don't know whether he sings in German or not. He probably does. But I know he'll sing his signature piece. No concert would be complete without it. You've all heard it, I'm sure. It talks about Barnabas, though it doesn't use that name. It goes like this: when I am down and oh, my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I'm still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I'm strong when I'm on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.